Hello dear students, as promised I had told you that there will be very short videos or series of short videos in terms of decoding the syllabus and not only the decoding of syllabus, unit wise from paper 1 to paper 2. We would also be looking at the certain questions, PYQs, previous year questions, what that question required, what was the structure required to deal with that question, what are the concepts that has to be brought in that question, and what may be the probables related to that question which has been asked. So here when we have talked about in the lecture 1, the unit 1, 2 and 3, emergence of sociology, sociology as a science unit 2 and research methods unit 3. I have picked up few questions abruptly from there which provided me more scope not only for understanding but also for giving the probables, the alternatives. Because I have always said, and even that day I told you, that you must come to the level of preparation where you are not only to easily handle, comfortably deal with the PYQs, but you are also able to anticipate some other range of questions by opening up the dimensions. So in the paper 1, unit 1, where the sociology is a discipline which was there, that began with the modernity in Europe, consequent changes, social changes, and the emergence of sociology. And there I talked about the moment we are talking about the modernity, that what modernity is all about, how the modernity has been viewed. You basically need to go to the components of modernity, in which one of the components of modernity which you talked about was enlightenment. And in this very perspective, I picked up the first question which quite oftenly has been asked. That is, what aspects of enlightenment do you think paved the way for the emergence of sociology? Now, in a very simple sentence, if I say what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is basically a critical reaction against the tradition and authority. Authority which we are talking about, which could be related to the political dimensions, in which you will be finding about the French Revolution later on. And the authority in which we are finding about the certain perspective of either the divine rule of kingship, or we are talking about the theological doctrine upheld and propagated by the church, the great chain of being. So these were the process, these were the certain kind of explanatory dimension which were prevailed up to the 20th century. From the 20th century onwards, more precisely from the 13th century onwards, from the beginning of Renaissance, that is the intellectual upheaval, we find about how the tentative changes in the Western Europe started emerging out. 15th and 16th century, we find about the development of natural science and its institutionalization process began. And when we come to the 17th, 18th century, we find about the Enlightenment. So here, the two parts which are the most important one. The first part which we are talking about is enlightenment, in which we are talking about as a critical reaction. I am not going too deep of tradition and authority. All right. And then we are talking about in terms of the emergence of sociology. It means with the enlightenment where focus is more on the changes brought by, but do not restrict our answers merely to the changes. We also talk about the dislocations brought by this one. So from here, you would also be talking about, in a very brief, passing reference in terms of the dislocations. Because if you are looking at anti-enlightenment, that how anti-enlightenment has also given the way to the emergence of sociology. So that way when you divide, and why we need sociology, why sociology as a new discipline was required. It means what were the need through which we found that now we need a new science of society which would be scientifically able to understand the society and the happenings in the society. So that way the certain changes will be coming out in terms of So here we are talking about in terms of the changes in terms of from religion to reason, empiricism. Then you are also talking about scientific temperament, all right, and then idea of progress and change, and once you have talked about, you also need to bring about only passing reference in terms of that how enlightenment, in enlightenment we also found about the focus on individual rights and democracy. And in this very perspective, when we talked about this, then we find that how this answer would be coming. So in terms of the changes brought by enlightenment, the changes which you talked about in terms of concepts, and also if possible, you just try to substantiate your view with the certain scholars like the Kant, Durkheim, Weber, all right, Irving Jetlin, passing reference. No, the scholars are to be used to substantiate your answers, not to frame your answers. And once you have done this one, then in these changes you just talk about that why in this changed scenario, need of sociology was felt. It means the culture tied to the land and the explanations culture tied to the land, and now the culture tied to the new kind of changes that required a newer kind of analysis, that required a newer kind of introspection, within which it was felt that how either natural science has developed or either natural scientists are discovering the natural laws to understand the natural phenomena. Could there be probability of discovery and establishment of social laws to understand the social phenomena akin to that of the methods of natural science? And in this very perspective, the very dimension of your answer should be coming out, to be substantiated with a certain scholars, one or two sociologists. So that way, that is more easier in terms of you look at a Kant, past and present, you are talking about enlightenment, and Durkheim would be coming out, all right, how modernity has proved to be antithetical to tradition, that way we will be finding about the Weber. So this way, substantiation of a view, how anyone who is talking about that how enlightenment has paved the way for the emergence of sociology, then if you're talking about Irving Jetlin, he says that anti-enlightenment has also contributed to the growth of. That's why I say that dislocations are to be worked about. Perfectibility of man, which was talked about, that how that would be challenged. And one of the greatest scholar of enlightenment, that is Immanuel Kant, have the courage to think. So that way your answers should be coming out, that very structure of the answers should be coming out. That is the requirement in which you basically need to talk about that what dimensions should be coming out. And what would be the probable questions, dear? One question which has always been asked in terms of enlightenment, it is also related with Renaissance. So you find about one question that how Renaissance and enlightenment and Renaissance, the progress which was initiated by the period of Renaissance was crystallized in the period of enlightenment. So Renaissance, development of natural science, discovery of the natural laws, and the movement in enlightenment from theology to science, scientific temperament, idea of progress and change, these all which we are talking about, through which we are basically talking about the emergence of sociology discipline. So this could be one question. There could be another question in terms of enlightenment also influencing the French revolutions and the emergence of sociology. All right, they may ask the question in terms of the modernity components of modernity and consequent changes. This could be the third one. And at the same time, some questions would be there where the intellectual reactions to the Enlightenment, Renaissance and the development of sociology. So, intellectual reactions that will be coming out. So, you will be talking about on in modernity, right from the Immanuel Kant to Locke to Voltaire to Montesquieu to Rousseau. Alright. So, this way the certain probable questions will be coming up. Do not prepare. That's why I am saying. You just give the heading modernity, define what is modernity, how to view the modernity, because socio-psychological crisis will also be emerging out, that would be addressed. Alright. That's why I repeat the line, that sociology emerged as a part and response to modernity, but sociology also emerged to address the dislocations brought by modernity. And then in the third one, we talk about what are the components, define the components, do not go deep into the history, because Enlightenment, Renaissance would be the part of the history as well, history syllabus. That much you basically need to focus what changes they have brought about. And then talk about the consequent changes. So that way you make the question. And then look at that from where the questions will be coming out. You do not have to prepare the questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make it a holistic kind of perspective. Segmentalization could be done. And once you have done, this is the one dimension through which your preparations of every PYQs have to go. You have to think on the probables or alternatives, alright, in terms of what kind of what range of questions could be asked. So anticipation of the questions from that unit when you are preparing the PYQs, you also come to the level, and that way I have given you one dimension. For example, if I pick up question number 2, is a non-positivist methodology scientific? Alright, now look at how do you, that day we talked about that how do we talk about science. So you talk about the certain procedure or what is science. Alright, at the moment you look at the growth of sociology, you will find about that how positivistic method right from the works of Auguste Comte, the founding father of sociology, that comes out. So here we will be talking about the non-positivism as an alternative to define it, subjectivity, the meaning of the individual. Alright. And once you have done this one, then let me say, repeat the line. The debate in sociology, whatever the positivism, non-positivism, we talk about the neo-positivism, we talk about post-positivism, such kind of questions have come out. And they are basically testing your nerve, dear. When I say nerve, once you know what is positivism, the tenets of positivism, and how they have been criticized, through which the non-positivism comes out. So you talk about in brief what non-positivism is all about. And then here, in terms of concepts, the many concepts, you talk about in a very brief, prepare that in terms of positivism, non-positivism, its propositions, alright. Then what are the examples? Few examples you pick up in terms of interpretivism, alright, symbolic, interactionism, so Mead, Herbert, Blumer, then phenomenology, alright, in terms of Alfred Suge, Edmund Husserl, and then Suge, and then it also talk about ethnomethodology, dermatological, alright. And in this very perspective, these are the certain propositions or approaches of the non-positivist one. And once you have done this one, then you deal with that what non-positivism has talked about. That's why I said in terms of subjectivity, in terms of the क्या है बीच में कॉल करता है सब qualitative data, that meaning attributed by the actor. All right. So when you talk about concepts would be subjectivity, qualitative methods, interpretive sociology, understanding the meaning. So these all would be from here. All the non-positive. These are the certain schools through which you will be finding about. So you talk about this in terms of subjectivity. All right. Meaning, qualitative. All right. Go through this one. Try to bring this one in your answers. All right. And it is also the same quote which I am talking about from Weber. Because all these schools from here would somehow or other would be influenced by the Weberian thought. And there I had quoted in L1, lecture 1, that Weber says that sociology to become science does not need to be positivistic in orientation. And even if sociology is not positivistic, objectivity does not prelude us. The way the scientific method, a key of the natural science, has been emphasized, and that way you will be talking about. So in this very perspective, we talk about this answer, you frame your answers from there. All right. And then once you have framed your answer there, then probables will come out. Your answers, I have given the answer sheet. And what are the probables? Probables are many dear. All the schools from interpretivism, sociology is an interpretative science. All right. They are asking the questions now on phenomenology, ethnomethodology, dermatological. All right. Symbolic interactionism. They are also asking the questions in terms of neo-idealism and symbolic interactionism. All right. So the neo-positivism, post-positivism, such kind of questions will come out in terms of, now if I say, we will be talking about not only the probables, will be positivism, non-positivism, that question which we started talking about. All right. We'll also be finding about neo-positivism, such kind of questions. All right. And then post-positivism. All right. You will also be getting the question in terms of nomothetic and ideographic, such kind of questions from there, same positivism, non-positivism. Look dear, do not mug up many scholars. All right. Scholars are to be used to substantiate your view. Unless and until the specific questions and a specific proposition or approach has been asked. For example, when they have asked you the phenomenology, then we'll be talking about Alfred Suge, we'll be talking about Edmund Husserl, that how Alfred Suge taking clue from the Husserl and also from symbolic interactionism. Such kind of clarity of thought should be there. All right. So unless and until they have specified the propositions or they have specified the thinkers, all right, do not quote too many scholars. All right. This debate of this positivism, non-positivism, I always says, could better be understood when you're talking about Durkheim versus Weber in terms of methodology. All right. And then you could understand the nomothetic versus ideographic. So these are the certain probable questions. All right. And any subject or discipline is a science or not, that cannot be answered in a simple yes or no. The difference between natural science and social science is more of a degree, not of a kind. And that way, whether non-positivism is a science, positivist methodology is a science or not, yes, it is scientific. All right. Rigor, the procedures, empiricism, this all would be done. All right. Systematic analysis will be done. And in this very perspective, we will be finding about that how, despite having the different kind of methodological assumptions or prepositions, they are not denying that sociology is not a science, and these are the certain approaches within the non-positivism or positivist propositions which have been critical to or alternative to the positivism. So that way the probable questions will be coming out. All right. And that way so many questions have come out. All right. It will also be related in terms of, can sociology be value free? The moment you are talking about the debate between positivism and non-positivism, the possibility of value free sociology, such kind of questions will be coming out. Facts and value dichotomic questions will be also looked at in a probable. All right. So value-free sociology is another probable question. Facts and value dichotomy is another probable question. Alright? Objectivity is another one. So these all seems to be related. That's why in a lecture 1 I have said that when you are talking about sociology, the science, unit 2, do not try to prepare A, B, C, D, E. They all are one. In which we will be talking about positivism, its limitation, its strength, what positivism has brought to sociology. Alright? Who are the critics? What are the different approaches in non-positivism and how non-positivism emerged as a critic to positivism? What are their assumptions? What are their premises? And that way you just talk about. So that way almost all the questions of the second paper, if you start looking at in a PYQs, would be related with this one. Alright? So you do not, once again I am saying, do not prepare one by one. Do not have the 20 questions. Make one synopsis, the structure is there with you. Look at the questions, write abruptly. Alright? You must attempt to write in extempore. Alright? And in this very perspective, if flawless answers are coming, their answers is structured, alright, you would be fetching more marks. You need to raise the subjectivity of the examiner or invigilator through your answer. Alright? You will not be producing anything new. The structure of your answers, the presentation of your answers, the solidness of your answers, the flawless writing will basically be able to raise the subjectivity of the teacher and you will be fetching more marks. Now once you have done this one, let me pick up at another abrupt question from unit 3. This is now the moment you start the unit 3, you find about that how the debate pertaining to quantitative and qualitative methods comes out. Alright, so here the qualitative method is there, so how? Quantitative, this is the one perspective will pick up. But I had told you the debate is not merely in terms of method. The debate between quantitative and qualitative had also taken, and more precisely, the qualitative method has also taken a turn on a philosophical dimension, on the philosophical lines, from where this question has been epistemological. So you define what epistemological is: the theory of knowledge, nature of knowledge, or ways of knowing to learn about reality. So the moment you have done this one, then you will be finding about what are the concepts. So concept is basically which you have defined in the answers, and that will be the answer kind of perspective. Just after the concept, answer writing will coming out. And what are the concepts which will be there in a epistemological one is 2 dear. Positivism and interpretivism, same debate. Qualitative, what you have done with the unit 2. That's why I am saying, once again I am saying, unit 1, 2 and 3, you prepare separately. But at one go, come to the level of understanding, sociological understanding, where these 3 units are one, and this seems to be interrelated. And once you are able to interrelate unit 1, 2 and 3, alright, you would find that you have gained the confidence. And the questions would seem to be too much easier to you. And once you have done this one, then define this, the concepts have come out, then answer would be there. Talk about how the philosophical, quantitative, qualitative has taken a philosophical kind of turn, within which epistemological come out, nature of knowledge, alright, and within which the 2 dimensions seems to be more important, that is the positivism, you know it, interpretivism, you know it. Talk about their dimensions. This is the format of your answers. Alright? And once you have done this one, dear, then probable questions are the most important one. So I said that philosophical debate has not taken place merely in terms of epistemological. It has also taken on terms of ontological one. It is a nature of being. That is, how do we come to know about the things? In which the ontological would be taking three stand here. Realism, idealism, and materialism. Alright. Now when you're talking about realism, there is an external world, independent of what people think of. Some are very similar to that of Durkheim's, sui generis, Durkheim's social fact. Idealism is reality could be understood by a human mind. So you are talking about interpretism. And materialism, you say there is a real world, but only material world is real. So that way, this one question would be probable. And a similar other probable questions have been there either in terms of quantitative method. They could also ask you the question on qualitative methods. And combination of this could be another question which has been asked is a mixed methods. Alright, this is qualitative, quantitative. So these are the certain probables, prepare that one. Once again I am saying, abruptly I have picked up the questions. But I have picked up only those questions which would provide or which has provided me the scope to cover so many other questions of PYQs. And I have told you how to integrate the different kind of questions from the units. So you do not start writing unless and until you have done unit 1, 2 and 3. Alright? And let me say that when you have done unit 2, dear, then you also try to do the unit 4, the heart and soul of sociology. So in the next lecture, L3, I'll just be giving you the brief account of how to approach the sociological thinkers. This is the way your answer should be there. This is the way the answer should be written. And this is the way you should be anticipating the questions. So from questions to concepts, answer to concepts, it is not only merely about knowing what is to be written, but what are the concepts to be used, what would be the structure of our answers, and what would be the certain anticipated or probable questions. You do this one, prepare this one. This much labor is required here. And once you have done this one, you have given that much time. Alright, you are a king, dear. The subject is not going to disappoint you. Alright, we all are here, I as a teacher, you as a students, we have a similar goal that I want your success, you want your success. Alright, so this way the things are to be talked about. Alright, so these certain questions should be talked about every now and then, and thus this series will be coming out. So the next series I will be talking about unit 4, and that's why I say unit 4 and 2 would be going together. Thank you. Alright.